come here in person and I think keep the momentum going. But I don't think that either he or his son-in-law, who's been the architect of this trip, Jared Kushner, has a briefcase in it with a blueprint, with a roadmap. I think we're a long way off that. I think they're still at this stage in listening mode with both sides, hoping that the force of the personality of Donald Trump can push this forward in a way that's not been achieved before. Certainly the Palestinians are listening, certainly the Israelis are listening. I think on the Israeli side, perhaps they'd hoped for a different start with President Trump. Remember the early days of the administration, we were all waiting for imminent news of the US moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to here, Jerusalem. Clearly, this is the place that both Israelis and Palestinians want as their capital, and Donald Trump, it seems, was at the last minute persuaded not to make that move. I think disappointing the Israelis, but they're trying not to let the disappointment show and trying to give President Trump a very warm welcome.
James, let's just pause for a second. Our viewers watching the pictures on the right-hand side of your screen live from West Jerusalem at the moment, the residency of Reuven Rivlin, the president, who has received his US counterpart just in the last few moments, signing a book there on his welcome. Large crowd gathered there as well. One of many formalities that you suspect will happen today, as James was saying, a trip perhaps higher on the symbolism than it is on what's actually expected to achieve. Obviously, Middle East peace is not achievable in a 26-hour trip, but this is part of it. Donald Trump, on his first overseas trip as president, making his mark, reaffirming the US's commitment, as he has said time and time again, to Israel, and Israel returning that as well. Donald Trump in West Jerusalem there, at the residence of President Reuven Rivlin, who's standing to his right, his wife to the further right, and of course Melania Trump, the First Lady, on the left. I guess, James, if you can still hear me, James Bays, our Washington editor, this is what it's about, isn't it? Pressing the flesh, being seen to be in the right places and making sure that everyone knows the commitment is there after things were perceived to have, well, frosted over a bit during the Obama years.
Yes, that's why he's having this meeting right now, not far from where I am. In fact, I could probably see the building if there wasn't another building in the way, but it is really very close to where I am now, that meeting that is taking place. You can hear all the tight security and the helicopters flying overhead as we speak. Obviously, the Israeli president is the head of state of this country, so the head of the state of the US has to meet him, but it's a ceremonial presidency in this country, so the real business comes later in the day after he's been in the old city and seen those religious sites. It's when he's going to sit down with the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who, as we know, had such a difficult relationship with President Obama. We heard Prime Minister Netanyahu, when they met at the airport, calling him Donald. I thought it was interesting that President Trump referred to him as Prime Minister Netanyahu, clearly stressing the close ties between the two, and echoing for me that meeting at the White House a couple of months ago, the first meeting between the two, when Prime Minister Netanyahu told stories of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who, as I said, is the architect of this trip, recalling how he'd known him as a little boy. I think suggesting the family ties between the Kushners and the Netanyahus, and of course Donald Trump himself is family with Jared Kushner.
Oh, particularly cosy, isn't it? All right, James Bays is our Washington editor on tour with President Trump. Thank you, James. Let's move elsewhere in West Jerusalem. Join